First of all, thanks for having me. And this has been somewhat of an evolution for me as to why I'm running for treasurer. I've enjoyed the House. I enjoyed the legislative process. I think we did some good things, some, just like anything, not so good things. But it became somewhat of a frustrating place to be, being in the minority for a number of years, not having a Republican governor for a number of years. It is what it is. I can't complain about it. But at the end of the day, my thought was I'm not going anywhere. I like Illinois. As kind of to back up a little bit, my dad's a retired Methodist minister. We moved all the time, and my mom's a teacher and retired teacher and principal. Was an assistant superintendent, and I can stay here or I can move like a lot of people do. And I get why people are moving. But it's not something that we want to do. We have kids. My folks are still in Illinois, and my brothers are in Illinois. So I want to stay. I think that the problems we have can be fixed and are solvable. I don't think that they're easy. I think there's some very difficult decisions that need to be made, and so I think I have some ability and talent in understanding the legislative process, and I think that most of these issues can be addressed and should be addressed. And I think the treasurer's office, and this is no indictment or statement on anybody in the past, can be used in a little more aggressive ways, either from a statutory standpoint or otherwise. And I thought this was an opportunity to take a look at this office. We have been involved financially, or have been involved in financial issues for a number of years. We were very, very vocal in the mid-2000s when the last time that pension payments were not made. We were very articulate, I think, as a caucus of the dangers of that and the ramifications of that. We've been advocates for balanced budgets, for less spending, et cetera. So we're not, new to the game, so to speak, of the issues that confront the state. So, I want to. So, bottom line is, I want to be involved in these problems. I want to be part of the solutions to these problems, and I want to use the treasurer's office in a more aggressive way. I think you could make a very valid case, and I actually did this 7 or 8 years ago to combine the offices of the treasurer and the comptroller, and I still believe that they should be combined, but they aren't, and until they are not used, the treasurer's office should be fully engaged in the financial problems of the state, as should all of the other offices. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And I want to utilize the office in an aggressive way, kind of an activist, if you will.
Now, you're an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have financial and/or investment experience?
Just, other than my personal investments, and I own some real estate, both myself and with a friend of mine, residential property, but and I was a prosecutor for 9 years. And I've been actively involved in the budget for the last 10 years in our caucus, on behalf of our caucus.
What are some of the aggressive things that you think the treasurer's office could do to be an advocate?
Well, for the taxpayers. So, it ranges from the treasurer of Rhode Island had no statutory authority, and she took it upon herself to take on the pension problem in Rhode Island. I met with her. She went around the state and articulated to a variety of folks through town hall meetings the downside of not fixing the pension problem in Rhode Island, the whole crowding out issue that we have. That is an example. But I'll give you several things that I think we can do. I think this treasurer has standing to enforce the balanced budget portion of the Constitution. We haven't had a balanced budget in 8 or 9 years, not since I would argue that George and Ryan and Jim Edgar had balanced budgets, and I asked Governor Thompson. He assured me he had balanced budgets, but that was before my time. But the concept of a balanced budget is one we have not honored, and I think the treasurer's office, we've done some research on it, has the ability and the standing to go to court if the treasurer needs to enforce the balanced budget part of the Constitution. And it, to me, is a linchpin of our recovery to balance the budget. And that doesn't mean we take and balance it and pay off our $7 or $8 or $6 billion bills depending on the day. That's just you start in the 2014-15 budget. You don't spend more than you have, and that's not been the case here. And we've played game after game after game of understating revenue streams, understating revenue reform streams, et cetera. You all know that what goes on here, supplementals, et cetera. And it's a matter of being very vigilant throughout the year and calling the General Assembly on the fact that you don't have a balanced budget. And that would be an example of one thing we would do.
So right, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Right today, Gene Bartopink on the radio yesterday said we're either like $7 billion in debt now, it might go, or 6 or 7. So would you, if you were treasurer today, would you sue and say this is illegal?
Look, I think that's unrealistic.
I mean, unpaid bills.
No, I think that's unrealistic. Here's what, if I was king today, I'd say, all right, starting forward, we're going to have to balance the budget, and we're not going to spend more than we take in. And at the same time, we've got $7 billion in bills. We've got to find a mechanism and a plan going forward to take those $7 billion and pay them off. And I don't think anyone expects us to pay them all off just like that. You know, we're not going to cut the budget by $7 billion and pay them off. If I'm either myself or I'm a taxpayer or I'm a business owner, and the state of Illinois said, all right, for the next 5 years we're gonna spend, you know, 5 into whatever that is. I can do my math, but we're going to take that $7 billion paid off over 5 years or 3 years or 7 years. I think as long as there was a plan of action to pay those down, then I think people believe that.
Isn't that what they say when they pass the budget every year?
Well, it has.
If you're saying it's illegal under the Constitution to have an unbalanced budget, don't we have one, and wouldn't that be?
We haven't had a balanced budget. I think that you could argue over the last 7 or 8 years that someone, and I think the treasurer happens to have standing, wanted to, they could have gone in and sued and forced the General Assembly back to the table, so to speak, and balance the budget.
So you would have done so by now?
Yes, if I was the treasurer, and I'll do it that day one. But we're kind of having two different we're not having two different conversations here. You're asking about the unpaid bills. I think you have to have a plan to pay those down out of, if it's 34.4 or 35 or 33 or 36, whatever the number is, you have to have a long-term plan to pay those down. And we haven't done that either. But I'm saying you have got to balance the budget if you're gonna have any recovery in this state, along with some other things. And I think the Treasurer's Office, because it hasn't happened to date through the legislative process, the Treasurer's Office can say, wait a minute, you guys and gals are utilizing a revenue number that's unrealistic. You're saying we pass a cigarette tax and that we're going to get $100 million in new revenue, and so you plug that in the budget and you plan on spending it. And in reality, you're going to get 25 or 50. Now you can point that out, and at the end of the day, maybe it's 25, maybe it's 50, maybe it's 70, but that's how we create these holes. And that's what's been going on for the last 10 years. And I think everybody knows that.
Well, I interrupted.
So no.
With your other plans?
So second of all is that we want to create, I'm going to call we call it a government integrity unit - oversight. And this is kind of an umbrella for several things. One is to look at financial documents. And one of the things that we focused on is just the whole pension abuse area, whether it's the Illinois Federation of Teacher issue with Preckwinkle going for a day, whether it's the Bob Marlaro leaves here and goes and does a paper for the alderman of Eddie Burke and takes his pension, doubles or triples it, through a variety of those, of using that office to weed that stuff out. And I mean, it's something we've been working on on the legislative front for a number of years, for the last couple of years. And it makes a lot of sense. I think if the media, with all due respect, or the U.S. attorney or someone finds that it's too late, we need to be, as a state, pretty proactive. I think that's a division of the Treasurer's Office. That's a way to utilize that office in a positive way. I also think that the Treasurer's Office can be engaged and should be engaged as an oversight to either the pension boards or even the governor's office. You remember the SEC charging us with securities fraud because we understated our pension liability. And I think we can be a source that reviews those documents, those bond documents, as an example. We can also, I think, weigh in on whether or not interest rate assumptions are realistic on pension systems, are actuarial assumptions realistic, and use that office as an overview. And then the third thing we would like to do is, and I know we always kind of get into this, is this really a business? Is it not a business? Do you run it like a business, et cetera? But in terms of transparency and in terms of having the public and I think the media aware of the true situation of the state, doing what we would call a quarterly report of the condition of the state, and provide a report card, if you will. And what's the you know, what's the credit rating? What's the unemployment rate? What's the, you know, what's the migration rate? What's the pension on liability rate? Or pension on liability, not rate, pension liability. Just kind of lay it out there in a very simplistic form to say this is where we are. And I know it gets, you know, occasionally gets done, and not occasionally gets done, but there's not a lot to it. And I think part of what's allowed us to have this spiral going down is that I don't think the public has been as aware as they need to be of how dire this is, and just the, you know, how bad it's gotten. I think we can use that office to educate and provide information.
The comptroller already puts out a monthly report. The attorney general supposedly oversees corruption and checks out bond deals. It sounds like, and I know you wanted to run for attorney general for a while until Lisa moved back in. Aren't you like expanding the scope of the office to places that other people are already doing or should be doing?
Comptroller provides more of a cash flow picture of where we are as a state versus what we're saying, providing a bigger overview. And she does a good job. I would never criticize Judy. I think she's very good. She's a good treasurer. We're providing more information that we have access to. And I don't think it's utilizing the office to the fullest to help try to fix this. I haven't seen the Attorney General engage in any of this issue, any of these issues. For instance, on the pension stuff, has done absolutely nothing. I think you can maybe make an argument that the Attorney General has standing to challenge the General Assembly on an unbalanced budget. Has done absolutely nothing about it. So this is an office that has a staff, has resources, has the ability to review documents, has the ability to review the budget, has the ability to review you know, interest rate assumptions, actuarial assumptions, and you're going to have that talent in the office. You might as well use it to the fullest.
Okay. Are you talking about new people for all of that?
No, use it within the no more new people.
Well, what about the government integrity unit? Isn't that?
You can do that within the office.
I thought you were bringing in like police officers. I mean, you talked about lawyers,
You
police
can,
officers, and prosecutors.
what I mean is you still use the same head count. You're not going to grow the office.
So who do you cut?
Well, you have you have access to looking at about 30 to 40 people that you can use those to your fullest. The rest of those people aren't going to go anywhere. They're, you know, entrenched in there.
Okay. I mean, one of the things that the current treasurer's office does is iCash, and as you know, that seems to be a way for treasurers to move around the state and have events. Would you keep iCash the same number of people? I know there's like a logistics team for Treasurer Rutherford of at least 6 people who set up these events. Is that too much, or?
I don't know the answer to whether it specifically is too much, Bernie, but I do think you can take iCash, and I think you can streamline that. I think you can do a little more on the iCash within the computer world, and take advantage of all the technology that we have as a country, and would be a little more aggressive on that front. There are a couple other things that, one of the things, for instance, not to dwell on iCash, I'm sure you want to get on in a little bit, but one of the things that I think the Treasurer's Office has been a little aggressive to shut down or collect cash from, you know, long-term, you know, if you buy stocks, for instance, and you've got you're getting dividends, and you've had them for 20 or 25 years, there have been some instances where the Treasurer's Office has gone in and said, well, that's unclaimed property, and they grabbed it. I think you have to be a little more cognizant of kind of some of the instruments that people use to invest. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you one way or the other whether you need 5 people or 3 people or 6, but I do think that you can utilize technology a little bit more on this whole front.
Under the previous treasurer, Alexi Janilius, they had some problems because they had some losses in the college savings funds that are run through the office, like a 529 plan. Am I correct that that is still being done, and what's the status of that, and what do you want to do with that?
Well, you still have the 2 plans. You have the Bright Start and you have Bright Directions. And look, I think one of the things that we have in Chicago and throughout the state is probably as strong a financial community or sector as you're going to find anywhere in the country, if not the world. I'm sure people from New York would argue with that, but I do think that one of the things the Treasurer's Office can do on a variety of fronts, on both investment overall of all of our money and even on Bright Start, is use that talent to help you on this, and I just don't think that that's happened.
So, what is the difference between Bright Start and Bright Connections?
Bright Start would be I can go in and use that as a parent, and that's Bright Start. So I can go I want to sign up for Bright Start and invest a certain amount of money, and then Bright Directions is I go in and I go in and say, I've got Michael Mahoney as my investor, and he or she is gonna create a 529 for my kid, and I want him to be able to do that, and then I can get the tax benefit from it. The other one, Bright Start, is more of a program run by the state where I can go in and utilize, it's Oppenheimer, and I can use Oppenheimer to pick my choices for my
Right.
kids.
And this is the one where there's no guarantee that you won't lose your money if the market goes down, right? As opposed to College, Illinois, which is run by the Illinois Student Assistance Commission.
But look, I mean, you're gonna want whatever best practices there are. So you want decent investment choices. You'd like a decent rate of return with a lower risk. I think you've got to figure out, for a, it's like someone getting close to retirement. You might bring down your risk as someone gets close to retirement. As somebody gets closer to 18, you might say to them, you might want to have a different type of investment as the child gets older, and lower that risk. So, and you also want a firm that has lowest fees. So you want to just use best practices on the Bright Start, because that's the one you're going to be running.
So when you say that Chicago has a lot of financial experts and we should use it, do you mean we should get a firm, like open it up to a different firm than Oppenheimer, or change that? Are you
Look.
upset with what's
No.
so what
I don't
difference
mean
are
it
you
that way.
talking
I'm talking about Dan's got. I want to make sure I want to. Michael, help me out. Dan's got the investment and policy committee, and I'm really not sure to what extent he's used it. But I'm just saying to put together a committee like that, and if we can't. It's not a criticism. I don't know how much he's used it, but use that investment policy committee, not a paid committee, but to come in and say, hey, wait a minute. Here's a better way to invest. Here are 5 other firms that can do it in a more aggressive way, or only they do college work, or you're investing money on a daily basis, an hourly basis. This is a better way to do it.
So you would reevaluate
Yeah.
the current firm.
Yeah.
Are you also saying those people should be reevaluating how the state investments are going under the treasurer, or do you think those are going okay?
Now, you're going to want a continuous evaluation, because the market fluctuates so much. Someone's going to come along and say, wait a minute, you're investing, the international market's been really, really good, but there seems to be a tendency, or there seems to be a trend here that the international market is not where you ought to be putting your money. And I'm just saying, why not use the best and the brightest you have in Chicago to be on an investment committee to say, you really need to think about where you're investing today.
Are you saying investors in Springfield don't know this stuff?
I'm not saying.
What's the Chicago thing?
I'm using Chicago as kind of the banking market. I think Illinois, as a general rule, is good. You know what I mean? Just start putting me between Chicago and Springfield. Whoever it is within this, I just think we have a very good pool of talent in the state of Illinois.
Traditionally, the office has, since Quinn days, has had these linked deposits where you invest state money in certain banks for certain purposes so they can make lower interest loans, to help farmers or help. Is that still going on, and is that something that should be expanded or contracted?
Well, we still have linked deposit. We have Ag Invest. My guess is, I think Ag Invest is still pretty aggressive. I think, I'm looking at my numbers here. I think about not 70, almost 65% of the money is used in Ag Invest at that linked deposit. Look, the rates around banks are pretty low these days, so interest rates. So people may not be taking advantage of them, but linked deposit has been very aggressively used by Dan's office, and it's not a bad program. You have the annual loans, you have the 5-year loans, for longer investments, for bigger purchases. So I don't have a problem don't see anything wrong with the linked deposit program. And if rates go back up, and I think they inevitably will, then I think you're gonna you might see more people taking advantage of lower money through an Ag Invest.
Okay, so that was basically small farm stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Any particular other programs you'd like to see, or any that shouldn't be there now, or do you know how many they have?
Well, there's this umbrella definition or umbrella term of community development that I think is very broadly used, and I don't know that we're kind of looking at some ideas on where you could go with that, but I'm not gonna go through those now. But you have a lot of latitude under community development. Let's put it that way.
During the fall, there was a lot of discussion about state's bond rating. How important is that to the state? What is your opinion on it? How important is the bond rating and it being stable?
Well, I think it sends a message about where we are as a state. It's just both to the rest of the country, to the business community, to the taxpayer, to the extent the taxpayer that pays attention. I think it's just kind of an overall grade, if you will, of the financial condition of the state. And I think it's very, very important. Obviously, it's important in terms of the cost of money, both for the state and for local governments. Local governments are paying a penalty because of our lower bond rating, and that's not good either. It's I don't know at the moment what the penalty is, or the additional points are, but it does have a significance for if you're the Springfield School District and you're going to go borrow money to do an addition to a high school, you're going to pay more because of our credit rating. So it ranges from reputation to raw money.
You are running against Bob Grogan. Some people forget this in the primary.
Who? I didn't forget it.
I know. Auditor of DuPage County. He said he'd be the first CPA as a treasurer since they established it. Why are you better than him for this?
Look, nice guy, but and a good person. He's actually very funny on the stump. But I think you need to be very much engaged and understand what goes on in Springfield, the good and the bad. And this is not an auditor job. We have an auditor general. We have a good auditor general, Bill Holland, and when Bill goes, I'd be a good person. I'd be willing to advocate for Bob Grogan to be the auditor, but the auditor general. This is a matter of knowing what goes on with the budget on a day-to-day basis, on an annual basis. This is having an understanding of what goes on, a vast understanding of the pension problems, and the debt, and all of the things that are confronting the state. And I think you've got, if you've been engaged in this and you want to be part of fixing it, and you want to be aggressive at it, you want to be an activist to help solve these problems, you have to have some understanding and a knowledge of what goes on. Remember, the General Assembly often leaves this building, or this place, the Capitol, and says, we have a balanced budget. Everybody in this room knows that's usually hogwash, or it has been the last few years. And if you don't know that, you're not paying attention to that, you're not vigilant about it, a lot of this can just go over your head.
I know your ad, every time I hear your ad, I get all excited. But,
Excellent.
Facing an important
Very, very
choice.
exciting to hear that.
And, the Democrat running, Mr.
I will
Ferg,
tell the guy that
supported
wrote it.
billions in
I
budget
can't
hikes,
wait to
leaving
tell
Illinois citizens holding
people
the
that
bag.
it's working.
And you're a proven conservative and established the government integrity unit and protect state funds from corruption and fraud.
You listen to
But
it
you've
before you
been
go
in-
to bed at night?
every day. But arguably, you've been in the legislature how many years now? Is it 20? And you've been a leader. You've been able to say these things. Mr. Eibendahl, your other friend, has written about.
He doesn't
all these,
like me.
Yeah, he doesn't. About various
We
tax
have enemies.
increases and fees that you voted for, and aren't you part of the problem because you've been, a leader in the legislature for so
No, look,
long?
I think we've been about as strong as anybody in that building for the last 10 years as I've been leader, much to the chagrin of the speaker and the president on all of these issues. I've got a folder that thick of where we were in 2005 and why we shouldn't make why we should continue to make the pension payment in a very, very aggressive way. We've been very aggressive about pushing ways to balance the budget. We've been very aggressive of advocating for balancing the budget throughout the year. We've been very aggressive on pension reform, and oftentimes falling on deaf ears. And so I would argue on the complete opposite, that we've been very, very aggressive of trying to turn this state around and not let us get into the condition it is today.
Politically speaking, I know it is considered, and I don't know every position people have, but Mr. Grogan, I think, is pushing himself as more conservative than you on various issues. And I know Senator Frerichs, who's the Democrat running, voted for same-sex marriage. I think you did too, which may be difficult and I think that was not what you had projected you might do. I'm not sure. So, you can get into that, but are you conservative enough for the Republican base to win the Republican primary?
Yeah, look, I think if you look at financial, the financial history of record of mine on taxes and on pensions and on borrowing and debt, I've been very, very strong advocate of the conservative side, if you will, and I think I can hold my own with just about anybody in our party on that, on the fiscal issues, and I think those are the issues. These are the issues of the day. Making sure we have a balanced budget, making sure our unemployment rate is down, making sure we have a pension system that's sustainable long term. Those are the issues for confronting Illinois. The migration rate is alarming at number 2 in the country. So those are the issues of the day. Not that social issues aren't important. They're very important to people. And I get that, and I'm respectful of that, and we're going to have differences on that. I am with part of my party. But on the financial and fiscal issues, we're right there where we need to be.
I was right on the marriage vote.
I voted yes.
And what was the reason for that?
That was the right thing to do. I think it's a personal issue. It's a little, you have a different role in life when you're not the House Republican leader, and you can you can view things differently. But it was, I've also talked, and I've been consistent about this over the years of, that individual choices and personal decisions are important to people, and I've been an advocate for that, and will continue to be. I'm so excited about the commercial. That is so good. Thank you.
Well, it catches your attention, but it sounds like you're running for either Attorney General or President, so I'm not sure.
We're not.
Should Governor Clan be putting off his budget address till March?
Look, I didn't vote for it. Our caucus was not for it. You can make both. You can make arguments on both sides of it. But there were some reasons that I think. One of the things that I keep hearing about that I think made some sense to not be for it is, for instance, school districts have to make some decisions early, in spring about what they're going to do with their employees, and to wait that long. In the last few years, it's been really difficult. And when I was the leader, I had a group of superintendents from primarily the Fox Valley, but broader, and we were doing conference calls. And this was a huge problem for them about whether they're going to have to rip teachers. And this is an example of causing angst for school districts if they don't get a real picture. Now, granted, they aren't going to really get a picture till May 31st, but it adds to their woes and makes it tough for them. So from a substantive standpoint, and this to me should not have been a political call, but from a substantive standpoint, there's an example of why the sooner you get to it, the better. I realize governors from both parties have asked for an extension, but that's just an example of why you should do it early.
What do you think will happen with the pension law now in the courts? And then well, I want a projection, and then what happens after that if it is unconstitutional? Just interested in your thoughts.
I have no idea. I really don't. These guys and gals are political creatures. They read the papers. They know the condition of the state. They may look for a reason to affirm it, but I really, honestly have no idea.
Which way did you vote?
I didn't vote for it. I think for any of us to try to speculate is frankly, we do it. It's the game we play. But the truth is, nobody has an idea what they're going to do. So that's and then the second answer. If they rule it unconstitutional, hopefully, there'll be some. I don't know if this is the right word. Some direction about what they would find constitutional, if anything. And courts can do that. Just say, look, this just doesn't work, or half this works, a quarter of it works, whatever. And I hope that there's some indication, my term direction, it's not a legal term, of where the General Assembly can go. And then we're going to have to regroup. I think my hope is that they're and this isn't a challenge to the Supreme Court, but that they're rather swift in their finding. I'm going to be diligent and but take their time. But this doesn't have to drag out for years. This is hopefully something we can see an answer on within a year.
When you announced in Springfield, Rosemary Long was there with you and seemed to indicate Sangamon County was going to be on your side, and then they ended up not endorsing in your race. Any idea why that happened? Or
look, we're in a primary, and a lot of places haven't endorsed. It's uncomfortable when you get a primary. Not everybody gets excited about your commercials, like some people, and maybe they haven't all heard it. But no, look, it's not that. It's been fascinating to go through this. I've actually been enjoying it. It's exciting. I love going around the state, but you think people are going to endorse you. Then someone texted me Monday night, and Homer Township and Will County endorsed me. I wasn't expecting it. So you don't know. You just don't know very much.
And just as a lawyer, there's the new law that sets limits on campaign spending and contributions and everything for the first time. Are you satisfied that the two accounts that you were using, the personal account, which spent like $150,000 in the fourth quarter of last year, and your treasurer account, using those both at the same time, were they for the treasurer's race? And is that because you're not supposed to be able to transfer more than like $52,000 from one?
Yeah,
committee to
a
another?
lot of what we were trying to do is segue out as being leader, and we had some obligations of that. I want to be very clear right now, I'm not going to break the cap, okay?
Gotcha. No $250,000.
I'm breaking the cap, sending money to North Central where our daughter goes.
Are you now using just one?
Yeah, we have cross for treasurer. I don't think there's much left in citizens. Do you know, Michael?
Yeah, no, I think
Part of that was as much segueing out as anything.
For $150,000. I mean, that seems like a lot.
I don't
to
have the
segue.
numbers in front of me. I know you've talked to Big Kevin
Yeah,
about this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like we're fine on that.
Minimum wage, where do you fall?
Look, I think it's got to be, it has to be, and it is part of the discussion. And I'm okay with that, but I also think that in this whole discussion we're having, you've seen it's become part of the governor's race. Taxes are high. Increased taxes also are straining people's budget. I think it's tough being a human being in Illinois right now. Really, for anywhere, it's a struggle. Unemployment's tough. It's big all over. Taxes are a struggle. Healthcare's a struggle. College is a struggle. And so, where do you find that happy balance of, the right wage to pay and where taxes should be, and also having a strong economy? And it's not just a simple I'm for or against. I think, it does have an impact. Appears to be, from a statistical standpoint, has an impact on business. So you can't ignore that. But you don't want to shut down jobs. But the answer is it needs to be part of the discussion. And I believe that. And I just don't know where that number is. We've got to figure out where's the federal government. In an ideal world, we'd be consistent with neighboring states. So I'm definitely watching this, and the answer is it needs to be part of the discussion.
As a prominent Republican known statewide, and you look at your party, which for the second cycle in a row seems to have an opening to take the governor's office. What do you think of the governor's race? Do you have a favorite? And
Come on.
Oh, go ahead,
Please.
Well, some people have favorites. And
Well,
are you worried that that they're sniping at each other and they're letting Quinn perhaps gain an advantage?
Look, it's a primary. It's what we do. I have a primary. No candidate wants a primary, but it's what we do. Okay, it's life. It's nice for the Democrats not to have them. Good for them.
Well, don't tell that to Mr. Hardiman. But
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Okay, don't you? Let's just keep that to ourselves. But anyway, it's what we do. And look, you're not going to have this clean primary where people are just going to sit there and talk about issues, and then we're going to nominate somebody and we move on our merry way. It happens. The sniping happens, and people get frustrated. They get tired. They get angry. They don't like the shots. They come back with their own shots. It's inevitable. And so, primaries in some ways can be very healthy, and there'll be enough of a gap from March till November that whoever our nominee is, and I don't have a favorite, with that he will emerge and will be able to create a campaign and a vision, I hope, and a direction of where he wants to take Illinois. And I think one of the things that we need in our nominee is a clear vision. And I think one of the things that we have not always had as a party is I think this hurt us a little bit 4 years ago, is that we all thought we could beat Pat Quinn, we could win just because Pat Quinn was doing a bad job and his poll numbers were bad. And I think you have to give voters a reason why you're running and what you're going to do, and be very clear and concise about that. And whoever it is, I hope that person does that, and whoever is the nominee for the treasurer's race on the Republican side, he needs to do that as well.
You had $10,000 plus donations from the Roners, so does that mean you're not, are you saying you're not?
He's helped us out for the last 5 or 6, 7 years ago in the past. He's helped me before. Look, I know all these guys. I went to Illinois Wesleyan with Bill Brady. I know them all.
Can you shed any light on what Treasurer Rutherford's press conference last Friday was about? What's going on in the office over there? Do you have any thoughts?
I wasn't there. You're really good today. You're on.
It's early.
What's in that coffee?
It's
God,
only
Brady.
half.
Man.
Other question. What's the wristband you got on?
Our daughter has type 1 diabetes. She's 20 years old. She's had it since she was 6. And she's she's actually remarkable, doing a great job. She's on the tennis team at North Central, wants to be a teacher. And there's a big movement in the JDRF world of walks every year. In Chicago, they have 5 walks, 6 walks. Ron Sano was the guy. And you guys, I don't know if you have a walk in Springfield, but we had 5 or 6 in the Chicago area. So we had a team when she was little, Reynolds roller coasters. And I've had this thing on. Well, we've got a box of them. I think I don't wear my wedding ring, I don't wear my watch. I do wear this. I just never
Since
want
she's
you-
6?
But I think this was a team we had one year, like 7 or 8 or 9 years old. But yeah, I mean, it's a nasty, nasty disease, and it's just my way to be supportive of Reynolds.
Do you mind saying her name?
Reynolds, Reynolds. Yeah, she's
North Central College. Where is it? Is
Naperville.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, so I've been very active in diabetes issues in the General Assembly, and a variety of them, and will continue to be, whether I'm an elected official or not. So that's what that is.
Governor Quinn talked last week about expanding early childhood education programs. Can the state afford to do that, in your opinion?
No, not right now. Now, and I have been about as big a fan of early childhood as anybody in the state. And actually, my dad was on the Onset Prevention Board for a while. I was supportive of it before that, and I've been supportive of it afterwards. So it's not that my dad was advocating for it. I think everything that's said about early childhood is accurate. I think early childhood saves us a great deal of money long term. And he talked about, you often hear about birth to 5. He talked about prenatal, and I agree with him on that. He actually, in last year's budget, I'm pretty sure early childhood went down a little bit. But it doesn't mean it's just a matter of prioritizing. I think it should be a priority, but I don't know that, and he never articulated how much he was talking about, but we can't neglect early childhood, and it's been a component. I don't know the number in the education budget. Do you have it? Do you know off the top of your head? It's pretty healthy, and I've always been, even the last few years when we weren't involved in the budget process much, have tried to push where I could on early childhood. So it's right for him to talk about it, and I said that afterwards. I wasn't critical, but we don't have $100 million to add to it. But wherever the pot is, I think we should continue to focus on it. It is essential, and the proof is there that it works. And actually, Illinois, well before my time, has been really strong in early childhood and better than most other states. We've been a leader in it. I did find it was a little interesting on one of the gubernatorial candidates on the Republican side has a wife that's the executive director of the Onset Prevention Fund. I just wondered if that wasn't part of the discussion. Now, maybe the governor was pure about his request to do early childhood, but you just wonder what was going on there. But either way, my guess is whatever. Good for him, and it's something we should stay focused on.
Another tough political question, could be the coffee, I'm not sure, but Illinois has gone bluer in presidential elections in recent years, and also the majorities of the Democrats have gotten bigger, like during your time as leader. Is there a fault? Is there a reason? What's the reason for that happening? And can people in your party be mad at you for that?
Look, we were on the trend lines where we were winning. We won 6 seats back in the last gubernatorial race. We did as well as anybody else. The states where Republicans did well and General Assemblies is where you had a governor that won and you had coattails. We had no coattails. And then, of course, we've been working at a Democrat map the last 2 cycles. I was in the minority for I was in 8 of 10 years in the 90s under a Republican drawn map. We were working under a Democrat map. I think where there's some comparisons and you can judge things apples to apples, we were able to hold our own. Now, having said that, I don't think we can. I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that we got our clocks clean in the last presidential race, and we have done, I think, a miserable job of reaching out to young people. I think we scare. I think we scare women. I think we sometimes scare men, and I think we need to be cognizant of that as a party. And I think we've done a pretty lousy job on outreach to minorities. And in the last presidential race, Hispanics, Latino voters went 80-20 against us. And I think we need to learn from all of them.
Are you pro-choice or pro-life?
Pro-choice.
Okay.
Has been.
What do you think about the movement to replace the current remap way of doing business with the
I take it completely out of our hands. And Republicans have been guilty of it. Republicans have been guilty of it. Democrats have been guilty of it. Take it out of our hands. I think the politicizing of the legislative maps is not healthy, and I think it's one of the problems we have in Congress. And I think you've got these extremely, you've got maps that go either way. And I think what happens is when you have a state that leans either far one way to the Republican side or far one way to the Democrat side, the whole idea of compromise and coming to the middle, it gets thrown out the window. And I think at the national level, you look at Congress, those folks don't have any exposure in a general election. Their race is all in the primary, and they're worried about that they're always going to be looking over their shoulder to the right. And they're wrong with people's views on it, but when you go extreme either way, that's not healthy for this process. And I think that's what happens when you have these abilities to kind of have this all or nothing approach to legislative maps. I think for us, and we were pushing this different approach back before we were the victims of the last. So I mean, we're not new on this. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and I've been supportive of it, and will continue to be. It's not working here. Now, again, we were on the wrong side of it this time, but we were also on the right side of it in the 90s.